One of the things I was thinking about a lot today was the great change, the upheaval that our culture underwent. When I was when I was in my about 13 or 14 in the late 60s, I was born in 56. And during the 50s and 60s, a lot of the media, really the whole country's culture was generally supportive of things that lined up with God's truths, the Ten Commandments, the Judeo-Christian foundation, and even even the most you could say adult shows still had to stay within a code. Everything, the movies, everything had to line up. There was a Hollywood code in effect, and in the late 60s, when things started going haywire in our country, and basically all of these basics, these foundational truths, these guardrails were just thrown out almost crazily. Well, actually, school prayer was removed in 62. And after that, we saw assassinations, horrible, things going on with drugs and sex and broken families and suicides in our culture. It just went downhill. The statistics went wild. And it's a totally different culture now, and a lot of innocence is now has gone away. And so today I wanted to share in this stream the idea of innocence, and that innocence and goodness and vulnerability has sort of gone out of style. And I'm a little concerned about this, but I think we can turn it around. Let me just give you some background. When I was growing up, as I said, there was sin. We were all born as sinners, so there's no such thing as a golden age. Every age had, a lot of times, in fact, when did what seemed like a golden age, there was a lot going on, under the scenes, behind the scenes. So it's not just a matter of looking good on the outside. But truly, I have to say, growing up in 56 and seeing the culture around me and seeing the mainstream primetime TV shows, Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best, Make Room for Daddy, Andy Griffith's Show, just all of these there were about 10 or 15 rural shows, the Beverly Hillbillies, and everything was, there was a lot of humor, but it wasn't cutting, bitter, satirical humor, and it tended to be wholesome, and it brought up kids it was more easy to be wholesome, more easy to be innocent and good, and for the girls to want to be virgins, and for the guys to want to honor women and wait for somebody like that who would make a great wife and mother, not just a one-night stand partner. And just the whole culture was more geared to make it more easy to produce strong families, fewer divorces, more responsibility, and less brokenness, because of broken families lead to broken kids. So less need for alcoholism or drunkenness, because the chinks in the armor of a person aren't opened up when a person isn't undergoing all this trauma. So these things don't get to creep in and addict people as much, and the devil, the evil spirits don't get a chance to really grip people, because you've got your doors closed. And I have to say that just today it really hit me that what has been under attack in our culture the last few decades, yes, the family, yes, purity and goodness, but in a way, innocence. Innocence has become something you have to, it has become almost the exception. If you look at anything that Hollywood is putting out, or just TV shows, or music, there has to always be an edginess to it. And it's as if, wow, why can't people just show innocence? Why can't they? It's almost as if you have to act as if you have it together. Kids have this terrible burden in school, and just to become, to act like they have it all together, to not be vulnerable, to sell themselves. Girls have to wear makeup or look like they're already adults, and women, and when they're only little girls. And just, it all goes back to innocence, because deep down, and I know this from ministering to people and praying, everybody has a portion of him or her that is like a little, still like a scared child, or a needy child, or not an uncertain child. Unless you're that one person who's completely certain about everything and never have to ask questions. But we all have questions. I have questions more now probably than I did, growing up, because as you get older, you find out what you don't know. And I think that the toughest thing is when you're in a culture in which coolness reigns. You can't find a place to take your question. Can't take, where do you take your needs? This causes a lot of people to become addicted or to go into something like alcoholism. They're afraid they'll lose face or be rejected. Where do I go for real questions? What if I really lie awake at night and have these thoughts? How could I ever share them with somebody? Who could pray with me? Who could? That's why we were creating this, Safe at Home Ministries. It was meant to be kind of on three levels. One is a playful level, safe at home, as in baseball, sliding home. You'll see our logo is, a baseball diamond. And, we're 13 sons. We all love baseball and softball, played for 20 plus years on the same team. So safe at home. That's one level of it. The other is just home, our ministry deals with home life, everyday life. Because if you don't live out your love for God in the home and your love for God and others in the home, and it's only reserved for church, well, you're missing the whole thing. You're missing 95% of life. So ours is very home based and strengthening the home, because God made the home. God made the home at the very beginning of creation. It's so precious to him. It's so vital to him. And so that's another thing. Safe at home means the home as God's heart feels it, his love for the home. And a third level would be simply that we are a home-based business. We did homeschooling, and we have a home-based ministry. We are a 501c3, have been for 20 or so years. We just are so used to being kind of just working hard and doing it ourselves, we almost don't forget to ask for any support. And I will say, though, we do have the 501c3 tax exempt status. If anybody does feel, hey, I'm part of the body of Christ, my role has often been to support others. I wouldn't want to speak out like this, but I want to support those. Your gift will be tax deductible. We give 100% of every penny, and we really don't get contributions, but I'm starting to remember to throw that in once in a while. We're going to try to even create a little button on our Safe at Home YouTube channel or some way. The people who feel led to do that can support this, or have us expand what we're doing. Right now, we're just funding it all out of our pockets and have been for decades. But to go back to the idea of it being a home-based ministry, that's another application to the Safe at Home name. And and the other, I guess, would be ministering to others to strengthen family. A lot of what we have a lot of our questions that come in have to do with how to improve marriages and families, and how to be more successful, how to find ways to provide for your family so the dad isn't away too much, and the mom, God forbid, isn't away all the time either. So ways you can earn money in the home, ways you can possibly homeschool, to encourage people to have confidence to do homeschooling, and in our case, even home churching, because to me, anything you can streamline and knock down the overhead on, if you're homeschooling, you don't have to just pay the fees at the school and all the expense of driving back and forth, and there's a lot of airspace in a school day, and same in business offices. There's a lot of downtime and wasted resources, and in churches too. You could have a big building and lots of seats, but not get that much individual attention. So by doing things on a home basis, we don't do it to isolate ourselves. We do it because it's a way to streamline and kind of squeeze the air out of all the air out of the, when you wrap food, it stays fresh if you squeeze all the air out of it. We just want to squeeze all the extra cost, time, and air out of everything. So with a big family, you kind of have to. So the Safe at Home, theme is something that just permeates us all the time. And one of the biggest things about Safe at Home too is that it's innocent. It's corny. It's kind of a corny name, fam team, Safe at Home. And a lot of people would want their ministry to sound more cool, more cutting edge, like, world conquerors, or, and I'm not saying those aren't nice names, but really Jesus said, when you become like a little child, you are conquering the world. You are in the best position. He said those who are the lowest are the highest. So innocence, look at an innocent lamb is the one who died on the cross for us. So I get real happy when I see people switching from being kind of a cool with it Christian, kind of self-centered maybe, to being a vulnerable person who asks questions. Because I have seen that a lot of people in our churches might be forgiven technically. They've gone through the whole thing and received Jesus, but they still seem to be running their lives and acting very similarly to how they would act when they were running their lives prior to being a Christian. Because you can have Christians who are basically in control and still acting in a way that I'm running my life. I'm not trusting God with much of anything. I'm not asking questions. I'm not going to look like a fool in front of everybody. I've got to, I love it. Put it this way, I'll tell you the reverse. I love doing live streams in which I pray with people. I do those on Facebook, and soon we'll do them here on the YouTube channel. You might want to set your phone to alert you as to when there is one, and then you'll be there for the first one. But I there's been a battle or a tug of war since about the late 60s, mainly in our culture, when all the innocent shows were swept off the air, like I mentioned earlier. Father Knows Best, and Leave It to Beaver, and Make Room for Daddy, and Andy Griffith, and it was called the Rural Purge. You can research that. It was actually a time when it's almost as if everybody, just the craziness of free sex and rock and roll and drugs, just kind of Eastern religions took over our culture, or at least threatened our culture, and people, it's like they were too cool to have all the network executives. Some of these shows were doing real well, but some of the major network executives took them off almost out of embarrassment. Everybody wanted to look hip and cool. The 70s was one of the most awkward, I think, times in the world. I mean, I lived through it while I was in high school. I went from 70 to 74. And everybody, everybody was trying to be cooler than everybody else. Thank God that in the spring of 73, I had a deep commitment to Jesus and was baptized in the Spirit. It took me into God's culture, and I met a whole lot of other, from henceforth, and I met Kathy that year too. I was able to be in my own world with God and other believers, and the actual culture seemed so silly and so changing and so disrupted. And it was a tough decade there, from like maybe 68 to 78, in that era. And I just was so glad that God brought Kathy and me to him in a deeper way at an earlier age. We believed in Jesus, but when we were in 73, when we were young, we both were baptized in the Spirit, and that has carried on to this day. And, from the very beginning, we knew that we should emphasize people, emphasize, when we were married, family, marriage, and love God with all of our hearts and love others with ourselves. And we always felt as if we should be vulnerable. Like, people open up to you when you're vulnerable, when you ask questions. But if you are always feeling a need to know it all, or make statements, or either periods or exclamation points at the end of what you say, you're not giving people any permission to enter your life. But yet I see a lot of people, a lot of Christians, having to act like they have it all together, or they have to act a certain way in church, or they have to act like they're victorious Christians. That's why I like doing the live streams with people who are really in need. I'll get messages. Sometimes in the live stream, people will say, I'm tuning in today from the emergency room. I love it when people are vulnerable. Isn't it a shame that we sometimes hide our vulnerability, when that's the very thing that makes you feel affectionate towards somebody, and you can identify with somebody, and you can feel, oh, I can get close to that person. That person's going through the same thing I am going through. Plus, when I meet somebody who's asking questions, I know that they're going to be humble, and humble people are the most interesting people to be around. Self-assured, statement-oriented people, you can only have certain kinds of conversations with them. So, but I do think that the innocence of asking questions has to be returned for a Christian to really, really come alive. I think there are a lot of people who are doctrinally right and receiving Jesus and are doing a lot of good things, but they just have like a fear of looking as if they're not having victory, or they don't have all the answers. And plus, there can be a lot of cynicism in our culture. So people might be sending around cynical memes, and nobody wants to be, even Christians might sometimes chuckle and laugh at somebody who's being too wholesome or too innocent, or raising the kids too ideally, or, just watch it. We don't want to become like the world and become scoffers. We want to become Christians. The ones who are with him ought to be the most lamb-like, of course, like a lion with Jesus in us, but like a lamb in terms of Jesus was so humble that when he never had to kind of show off. He never had to call down those legions of angels and to show who he was. He was secure that God was fighting for him, and God was going to resurrect him. So I guess the biggest battle, and this is what I want to share with you today, is just the biggest thing you can do for yourself and your family is to be innocent, be truthful, don't be wily, don't be clever. If you have that in you, bring it to the cross and let it die there, and take the new white robe of being a new person over you. Take it to the cross and exchange that in. We want to lose that. We want to gain that freshness and innocence and joy. And you can still be smart. You can still be clever. There's a huge amount of humor in our family, but everybody stops short of it being destructive, sarcastic, cutting, bitter. And nobody, what I always try to instill in my family is it's an honorable thing, especially men need to hear this, to ask questions, for a guy to ask directions if he's lost. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, sometimes there's something called little guy syndrome, where guys who have to prove their manhood. But if you're already confident in being a man, you can be gentle. You can ask questions. So I even noticed this with a lot of the MLB players, Major League Baseball, Christians we interviewed as part of our ministry, and we had a Safe at Home TV show for almost 2 decades, and we had them. The players would sometimes come to the Arndt annual event called the Softball Classic and give their testimony. These Cardinal players, and one of the things I noticed is those who were walking with God, had strong families, and were doing well in athletics. They didn't have to act like they're a tough guy, like your typical high school jock or tough. They were like real gentle and almost silly when they were in these softball games to raise money for ministry. And so they would be on the Arndt team sometimes, and we would play against a media team. And it didn't raise much money. It just basically was a lot of fun. It was a witness, and it covered some of the expenses. But I just would notice that these guys, who could hit a ball 400 feet, would be like little kids, prancing around, having fun at our event. So please be childlike. Jesus said that those who are like children are the closest to the kingdom of God. He means being innocent, being open, asking questions, being approachable, being able to be. I can't help people who aren't like that. They put up too many walls. They're too sure of their position. They're almost like arguing. Even as Christians, no, we have to have a warm heart and be melted together. Because I think heaven is made up of a lot of that atmosphere, of a lot of just like a bunch of kids, a bunch of closeness, a bunch of innocence and joy, where there's no sin, there's no trickery, there's no sneakiness, there's no bitterness. And this started a lot with media. And that's why we are in the media. We want to reverse that and swallow up that dark cynicism and deadness with joy and fun and laughter, all the fruit of the Spirit. And that's why we're doing these videos, and that's why we have 2 channels. So we'll keep expanding these, and continue to pray for us as we do this. Tell others about it if you would like. We're going to answer any questions you have. You can send those or put those in the comments. Thanks for listening to me today, and I'll be back soon. Bye.